I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories. You read them online, feel a pang of sympathy, and then move on, thinking, that would never happen to me. Yet here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers, trying to make sense of the train wreck that was once my life. My name's Michael. I'm 38, a mechanical engineer living just outside Denver. My wife, Emily, was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of shared dreams, love, and what I believed was loyalty. She's 35, a marketing manager with a smile that could light up any room and a laugh that used to feel like home. It started subtly, those tiny shifts you don't see as warning signs until they're screaming in your face. A couple of months ago, Emily began acting differently. It wasn't anything drastic at first, just small changes. She stayed late at work more often. Weekend plans with her best friend Amanda suddenly became frequent and out of the blue. Her phone, always within reach, started buzzing with messages she'd quickly dismiss, flipping it face down on the table. I told myself not to overthink it. She was busy. Everyone is busy. We'd hit a rough patch, sure, but what couple doesn't after over a decade together? I figured we just needed to reconnect. With that in mind, I planned a quiet New Year's Eve, just the two of us. A nice dinner, champagne by the fire, and fireworks at the park near our house, a tradition we'd cherished for years. A week before New Year's, Emily shattered that plan. One evening, she sat me down, biting her lip the way she always did when she was nervous. "Mike," she began, "I was thinking, maybe I'll spend New Year's with Amanda this year. She's going through a rough time, and I want to be there for her." I blinked, caught off guard. "You're joking, right? We always spend New Year's together. It's our thing." Her expression hardened. "It's not a big deal. We've done it every year. Amanda needs me, and you hate the big parties anyway. What's the harm?" "The harm," I said, struggling to stay calm, "is that it feels like you're leaving me behind. Emily, we've got plans. The fireworks, the dinner." She cut me off sharply. "Why do you always make everything about you? God, Mike, it's one night. Can't you just let me do this?" The fight spiraled out of control. Accusations flew, me being too controlling, her being distant, and it ended with her storming out of the room. The next morning, she packed a bag and left, saying she'd stay with Amanda until after New Year's. I wanted to believe it was just a stupid argument blown out of proportion, but everything felt off. Then came the text. It was from her coworker Ryan, someone I'd met a few times at work events. "Hey Mike, saw Emily last night with Amanda. Hope you're doing well," it read. Something didn't sit right. Ryan lived near us. Amanda lived clear across town. Why hadn't Emily mentioned running into him? I replied casually, fishing for more details. Ryan responded quickly. "Yeah, they were downtown, grabbing drinks at Harlan's. Looked like they were having fun." Cheers, man. My gut twisted. Emily hadn't mentioned going downtown. Amanda lived nowhere near Harlan's, and it wasn't her kind of place. Something felt wrong. I needed answers. I called in a favor for my buddy Chris, a private investigator who owed me one for helping him with his garage renovation last summer. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the unease in my chest wouldn't let go. The next evening, Chris called. "Mike, I've got a lead," he said. "Emily wasn't at Amanda's last night. She checked into a hotel downtown. Alone. Alone." I repeated, my heart pounding. Why the hell would she do that? Chris hesitated. "I also found out she's been meeting someone. A guy named Jason. They've been meeting at a house in Cherry Creek. It's rented out for private events, and I think you'll want to know what kind of events." "What are you saying, Chris?" I snapped. His voice dropped. "It's a swingers club, Mike. Invite only." "I'm sorry." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Emily. At a swingers club? It didn't make sense. Sure, things had been rocky, but this? My stomach churned at the thought of her with someone else. I wanted to call her right then and demand answers, but I needed proof. The next night, Chris called again, and his tone told me it wasn't good news. "Mike," he began. I followed her. She left the hotel around 9 o'clock and went straight to the Cherry Creek house. It's definitely a swinger event. Discreet parking, security at the door, no phones allowed inside. I couldn't get in, but... I'm sorry, man. I barely slept that night, staring at the ceiling as Chris's words replayed in my head. A swingers club. My Emily. It couldn't be true. But deep down, I knew it was. Phones weren't allowed inside the venue, so I had to wait outside. She was in there for hours.
Mike, my grip tightened around the phone as I asked, was she alone?
Chris hesitated. No, he said reluctantly. She was with a guy. Tall. Dark-haired. Mid-30s.
I couldn't catch a name, but they seemed close.
My throat felt dry as I swallowed hard. Did she leave with him? Chris sighed. Yeah. Around midnight, they went back to her hotel. Both of them. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands trembled as though they no longer belonged to me.
It felt like my chest had been hollowed out, leaving nothing but a raw ache.
Emily, the woman I had loved for over a decade, was spending the night in a hotel with another man while I sat at home, trying to figure out how to fix us. But I wasn't done. Not yet. If she thought she could lie and cheat her way through our marriage without consequences, she was in for a rude awakening. I called Chris back and told him to keep tracking her. Then I decided to start digging on my own. Emily had always been careless about passwords, and I knew she used the same one for nearly everything. It didn't take long to access her laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. There were emails between her and someone named Jason, a name Chris hadn't been able to confirm but one I now knew all too well. The messages started flirtatious, grew explicit, and finally turned cruel. Jason, can't wait to see you again. It's been too long since I've had you all to myself.
Emily, I know. I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it.
Mike wouldn't understand. He's too boring. That word, boring, hit me like a hammer. After everything I had done to build a life with her, this was how she described me. I kept scrolling. Each email cut deeper than the last. They joked about me. They mocked our marriage. Worst of all, they planned their next rendezvous, tonight. The room seemed to close in around me, suffocating me. My hands shook as I called Chris.
Meet me at the hotel, I said, my voice devoid of emotion.
When I arrived, Chris was already parked across the street, his car blending into the shadows. He nodded grimly as I approached. They're inside. Checked in under Jason's name. Room 403. My jaw clenched. I'm going in. Chris grabbed my arm. Mike, think this through. You're angry, but you need to stay calm. Get what you need and walk away. Don't do something you'll regret. I nodded, though my heart was pounding like a drum. I felt electrified with rage and heartbreak, but I knew Chris was right. I needed to stay in control. The hotel lobby was quiet, almost too quiet. I approached the front desk and tried to look casual. Hi, I think I left something in room 403 earlier. Could you let me in? The receptionist hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't. I leaned in, lowering my voice. It's for my wife. She's inside. It's a surprise. Her demeanor softened, and she handed me a key card with a smile. Enjoy your evening, she said. The elevator ride felt eternal. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unbearable than the last. When the doors opened, I stepped into the hallway, every step toward room 403 heavier than the one before. I stopped in front of the door, my hand hovering over the handle. The key card trembled in my grip as I swiped it and pushed the door open. Inside, the scene that greeted me was worse than any of my imaginings. Emily was sprawled across the bed, half-dressed. Beside her was Jason, just as Chris had described. Tall, dark-haired, mid-30s. They froze, their expressions shifting from shock to horror as the door swung open. Mike, Emily stammered, scrambling to cover herself. Her voice was shrill, panicked. What the hell are you doing here? I couldn't answer. My gaze darted between them, the betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. Jason stood, raising his hands as if in surrender. Look, man. Shut the hell up, I snapped, my voice cold and sharp. This isn't about you. Emily started crying, her words spilling out in a frantic babble of excuses, but I didn't want to hear them. I turned on my heel and walked out, my head pounding and my heart in pieces. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay, to yell, to make them feel the depth of my pain. But I knew better. Losing control wouldn't fix anything. It would only give Emily the upper hand. As I stepped back into the night, the cold air hit me like a slap, but it didn't numb the ache inside. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The consequences of betrayal. A journey to freedom. I walked away from Emily's betrayal determined to handle the situation on my terms. When I got outside, Chris was waiting in his car. He didn't ask what had happened. One look at my face told him everything. "You okay?" he asked quietly as I climbed into the passenger seat. "No," I said, slamming the door shut. "But I will be." That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't face the empty house, the reminders of Emily's lies, or the facade of normalcy. Instead, I stayed at Chris's place. We sat in his dimly lit living room, downing beers while planning my next move. Divorce was inevitable, but I wasn't going to let Emily walk away unscathed. Gathering evidence. The first step was collecting evidence. I already had the damning reports from the private investigator, emails, photos, and notes about her rendezvous with Jason at the secluded cabin near Share Creek. Chris had even discreetly taken some pictures of them together outside the cabin. But I needed more, something indisputable that could protect me in court. The next morning, while Emily was still away, likely with Jason, I returned to our home. Walking through the front door, I was hit with the sickening normalcy of it all. Her favorite mug sat on the kitchen counter, as if nothing had happened. Our wedding photo was still on the mantel, mocking me with memories of promises she'd shattered. I pushed the emotions aside and went straight to her laptop. After digging through her files, I found a folder she had tried to hide. Inside was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, receipts from expensive hotel stays, chat logs detailing her trysts with Jason, and even photos of them together at a swingers club. It was almost as if she wanted to be caught. Armed with everything I needed, I contacted a lawyer. The confrontation. A week later, Emily came home. She must have sensed something was wrong because she looked unusually nervous, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. "Mike," she said hesitantly, setting her bag down. "Can we talk?" "Sure," I replied, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Let's talk." She started crying immediately, big, dramatic crocodile tears spilling down her cheeks. She launched into a rehearsed apology. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was lonely, Mike. You've been so distant lately, and I didn't know how to handle it." I let her continue, biting back my anger. When she finally paused, looking at me with tear-filled eyes, I dropped the bomb. "I know about Jason," I said coldly. "I know about the hotel, the swingers club, everything. So spare me the bullshit, Emily. I'm done." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. "Mike, please," she begged, desperation in her voice. "It was just a phase. It didn't mean anything. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said sharply. "You made your choice, and now you can live with it." Swift justice. The divorce process was quick. Thanks to the overwhelming evidence I had gathered, Emily didn't contest a single thing. She walked away with nothing. Not the house, not the car, not even a dime of my savings. But I wasn't done yet. Jason wasn't just some random fling. He was married. His wife, Rachel, was a sweet woman I had met at a few work events. She didn't deserve to be in the dark about his betrayal. I found her number in Emily's contacts and called her. "Hi, Rachel," I began cautiously. "This is Mike, Emily's husband. I think you need to know what's been going on." I told her everything, sparing no details. By the time I finished, she was crying softly on the other end of the line. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her voice trembling. "I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to believe it." Rachel didn't just believe it, she acted on it. Within days, Jason was out of their home and slapped with divorce papers of his own. Moving on. It's been 6 months now. The divorce is finalized, and I've moved out of the house Emily and I once shared. Starting over hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. I've reconnected with old friends, taken up hiking, and even started seeing someone new. A coworker who had always been kind and supportive, even during my darkest days. As for Emily, the last I heard, she was living in a cramped apartment across town, working long hours to make ends meet. Jason dumped her shortly after Rachel kicked him out. Apparently, his commitment didn't extend beyond his convenience. I don't hate Emily anymore. In some strange way, I'm almost grateful she revealed her true colors. Her betrayal freed me to build a better life. A life where I'm surrounded by people who respect and value me. Betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this: I'll never let anyone take me for granted again.